Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome to verse 3. While you're all filing in, logging on, doing your thing, we're just going to be here looking pretty on your screen. This is always the awkward Zoom like intro
Yeah,
moment.
the waiting. Do 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 do.
The chat is on.
Yes. Okay, for those who are joining us, the chat is for you all to interact with each other. Questions for Boots need to go in the Q&A. If you put a question in the chat, we are not going to answer it or not even see it because we are not monitoring the chat. Q&A is where we want you to put any questions that you want to get put to Boots. And I will repeat that in just a minute. Let's give it one more minute for people to log on, and then we'll get started. All right. So glad everyone's joining us on a Wednesday evening. Do a little screenwriting love time. All right. I think it's fair. Who's on is on, and others will join us when they can. So welcome everyone to Burst Session 3. I'm Sam Bimpong. I'm one of the producers on the Bay List and co-director of Make It Bay. And we have here with us Isa. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Isa Nakazawa. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Bayvac Media, and I'm repping for all of the Bayvac crew tonight.
Amazing. So just a little quick housekeeping. Some people already heard me say it, but I'll say it again. If you have questions that you want to have submitted to Boots, please put it in the Q&A, not the chat. The chat is for you all to interact with each other. We will not be monitoring it. Q&A is where you can put all of your questions. So I know you're not here for me, so I'm just going to do a quick intro, who I am and what I'm doing. I'm helping run the Bay List, and for those who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, the Bay List is a new initiative to identify and highlight 10 exceptional screenplays and pilots by writers from or with close ties to the Bay Area. We are working in close collaboration with the Blacklist and some amazing partners. And really the reason we're doing these burst workshops, the reasons we're doing everything we're doing with the Bay List is we want to help create access, right? We want to shorten that ladder for those who have been able to open the door and get some work done in the industry. We want to hold it open and bring everyone back in, shorten that ladder of hard work, and see how we can help the amazing stories and the amazing creators that are here have that pathway. So with that, I'll pass it to Isa to give a little ground setting for Bayvac's perspective, and then we can move to the rest of the evening.
Thanks so much, Sam. Yeah, it's such a joy to be here. We're on our third and last session with y'all, and it's been such a pleasure to spend time with you. So thanks all for spending your Wednesday evening with us in this windy, blustery day. For those of y'all who don't know, Bayvac Media is a community hub for media makers here in the Bay, and we've been providing technical training, community events, and access to resources for nearly 50 years. And Verse specifically is a series of short form training just like this, where we partner with both independent artists and amazing organizations like the Blacklist to bring responsive training and workshops to our community of media makers of all skill levels on a free or below market basis, which is really important to us. And we're really thrilled to be part of the Bay List. So thank you also to all the people behind the scenes who've been working really hard to make the magic happen. I really do want to shout out my colleague, Jess Epstein, who's been working really hard on our end to make this happen. Also Rafael Casal, Sam, for your leadership, all the folks at the incredible Blacklist team, Cinemama, Dolby, and the accomplished collective of folks from the Bay stepping in to elevate this important project. As we all know, the Bay nurtures really amazing writers. We write about our communities, our neighborhoods, our legacies, our music, and we're truly independent thinkers and artists here. So this project is a way for our talented writers like y'all to jumpstart your careers as screenwriters. And like Sam said, the heartbeat of this all is access. And so yes, our 3-part Verse sessions with the Bay List have been made possible by the Robertson Foundation. So we want to give a big shout out and thank you to Julia Robertson, an indie filmmaker and champion of this work. And without further ado, I'm gonna kick it back to you, Sam, so we can get into it.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce the moderator for this evening. It's Asusana Racia. She's a bilingual journalist from East Oakland. She has reported on Oakland arts, culture, and community for over a decade. She hosts Culture Makers, a quarterly live event where she converses with Oakland creatives. If you haven't checked it out yet, you definitely should. She started her career at the East Bay Express. Her work has appeared in San Francisco Chronicle, KQED, Eater, Curb, The Oakland Side, and other publications. She's a wonderful human. I'm so glad she's with us tonight. Asusana, thank you. Next on deck, I have the pleasure to introduce someone who really doesn't need an introduction, but let's do it because his resume is impressive. Activist, filmmaker, and musician Boots Riley. For those who don't know, he studied film at State University before rising to prominence as the frontman of hip hop groups The Coup, Street Sweeper Social Club. His debut feature film, Sorry to Bother You, premiered at Sundance in 2018 and was acquired by Annapurna Pictures. It was released to resounding box office success and widespread critical acclaim and was mostly filmed here in the Bay. Fervently dedicated to social
All
change.
filmed in the Bay. Yeah.
All, sorry, apologies, all 100%
Right.
filmed in the Bay. Boots is fervently dedicated to social change. He's deeply involved with the Occupy Oakland movement and was one of the leaders of the activist group, The Young Comrades. His book of lyrics and anecdotes, Tell Homeland Security We Are the Bomb, is out on Haymarket Press. He is the recipient of the Independent Spirit Awards for Best Feature Film and SF Films Canvar Award. His most recent work, I'm a Virgo, is available on Amazon and was nominated for a Gotham Award, 4 Independent Spirit Awards, and 4 Independent Spirit Awards. He is currently working on I Love Boosters, starring Keke Palmer and Demi Moore, and set as well in Oakland. Also, he's just frankly a really dope human, and we're really grateful for him to be here. So I will disappear, and I'll leave you all to it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Isa, Sam, thank you so much. Boots, thank you so much for taking time out of your super busy schedule to be here with us.
Oh,
I need to kick off by congratulating you on the early praises for I Love Boosters at South by Southwest, which is named after one of your songs. I got this quote from Mexican actress Eiza Gonzalez. I read it earlier today. She said, and I quote, "Nothing that you read will be able to transport you to what it really is. It is just deliciously and utterly Boots Riley at its absolute finest." How are you feeling about the reactions you've gotten so far? And to kind of bring it back to the local kind of angle, were you able to film on location at all?
I mean, we just shot this weekend some stuff, but it's mainly not shot on location, but it's supposed to be taking place in Oakland. But yeah, we did just go shoot some stuff in Oakland this past weekend. So a little bit.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. How are you feeling about the praises you've gotten so far? I'm sure you have a lot more, but that's the one that
I mean, are there any more? I like them. So no,
round them up and then...
yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, Eiza was really great to work with, as was Keke Palmer, Naomi Aki, Lakeith Stanfield is in it, Taylor Page, Poppy Lou, a lot of great actors. And, I'm still in the midst of working on it, so I'm not really taking any of that stuff in right now. So, yeah.
Are we going to see it premiere this year, or what's...
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely.
Amazing. We can't wait. I know the folks...
Hopefully it'll be out late summer, early fall.
I know that the folks tune into the chat, tuning in today, are like so eager. Obviously, all of your projects are so amazing.
Will Poulter is in it too.
All the cast, maybe know.
And there's other people in it that I can't yet say. So
earlier this week, you and I chatted briefly, kind of about filmmaking and a little bit about, what we were working on today. And something that you mentioned, you said how a writer is the one who's most excited about their own scripts, and how you advocate for aspiring filmmakers to direct their own projects. So one question that I have is, what is your advice on how to transition from a more introspective role of being the writer to being a more outgoing team leading role as a director?
It's the real answer is I don't really know, but I'll say this: when I was a teenager in radical organizations, I started out very shy and worried about embarrassing myself. So like a lot of times I wouldn't, I was in a communist organization, but I didn't want to go talk to anybody about it. They might disagree with it. They might look at, oh, who are these people you're with, and all those things you worry about as a teenager. And the thing that got to me was someone said, look, what we're doing is way more important than your worries about yourself or being embarrassed or anything like that. And you end up having to you like if you, and the thing was, if you don't do it, it's not going to get done, right? And so I take that into a lot of the things that I do, and that has to do with learning how to work with people. That has to do with expressing your vision so you can get something done. You just have to get over those obstacles, and it's through trial and error. Like for me, luckily I was able to take other things I did from music and use those things I learned over periods of time to do that. So if you have no experience being on a team or leading a team, you're going to have to create that experience. Going to have to just make the path while walking, right? So work with folks and make projects happen, whether they're, and maybe that's why a short film is good for someone, to be able to work with a team. You might already have the experience in other parts of your life. Maybe you have a family and you're able to get everybody together to do a thing and to make a thing happen. Maybe you maybe you do sports. Maybe you're in a group of people that make music. There are all those things, and really it's all applicable, and everybody's trying to figure out how to do it. And so if you are the person that develops the plan and says, this is the plan we should follow, then you'll be able to lead and express your vision.
Now, would you say that aspiring filmmakers should have an X number of projects under their belt as being the directors before they can maybe feel like they're ready to work with a different director, or what's
I'll tell you what, I was a filmmaker in residence at SF Film, and Guillermo del Toro came for a lunch for some other, not to the film house, but to the festival. And so I made sure I got in there, and then I got right next to him in the buffet line and started telling him about my as yet unmade movie, Sorry to Bother You. And he was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I kept telling him the story and got him into it. Like, oh, here's what the stuff is going to look like. I had little drawings, and everybody was mad at me because I was taking up Guillermo's time, and they could have been talking to him. And he was like, this is going to be such the project. I can't wait to see it. And then he was like, how many movies have you made? And I was like, none. And he was like, oh, I don't know if you want to do this first. I don't know. And he said, well, look, get your phone, get something, and just make things, Then I told him, I had made a few things. I had participated in helping to make music videos, things like that. But other than that, I had no experience, but I hadn't directed or made a movie, but I had made things, if you can build a boat, you can figure out how to build a house.
Yeah.
Right? So you have often people have experience making things, and you take that experience and you put and what the thing that you have to learn is that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing.
This is true.
Everybody's figuring it out as they go. And so I don't think there's a set amount of experience people have to have. The thing is going to be the thing that it is. And you're going to make another thing after, and another thing. a lot of people with the Coos first album are like, oh, that's my favorite album of yours. And honestly, it's an album that's hard for me to listen to because I know what I did wrong or whatever. I know what I didn't like about what I did. But the thing is, it is the thing that it was. You know, that's what I was able to do. And with Sorry to Bother You, I'm lucky that I didn't have as much experience because so many directors came up to me after seeing Sorry to Bother You and was like, how'd you do that? How'd you
You're
do
like, I just did it.
Yeah. And then when I started writing other things and I caught it creeping in where I knew how hard it was to do a scene, like I had been writing just like, yeah, this happens and this happens without knowing how hard it is, like how many hours it takes to do a thing or how what it takes to build this set or whatever. And then once I knew those things, I caught myself, having to force myself to not worry about those things that I now knew.
Yeah. Now, all these years later, after Sorry to Bother You, is there something, have you had time to sort of like reflect on the work? And is there anything that you would have done differently?
There's a few things, like there's mistakes, like, and we're talking about Sorry to Bother You, like, there's the VIP room, right? So it's supposed to be a small, cramped place, and it really kind of gets this ridiculousness across. And I wrote in the script 10 by 10, a 10 by 10 room. And a 10 by 10 is actually not that small, right? But in my head, I just wrote that. And then it was always a scene that was on the chopping block. It was always like, Boots, we're not going to have time to do this, blah, blah, blah. And, we made it so that the room that you see was really just this like pipe structure with curtains hanging on it. So we could take it any place. And anytime we had, maybe we'll have 2 hours today and we can set that up and do it. But so it got set up last second. And then I walk in there and it's like this big room. And so we had to shoot it in a weird way. And to make it seem smaller. But I think I feel like that's something that could have come across a lot better. I think, when they're doing the trying to break through the picket line, we just didn't have enough time to get enough shots to make that clear what was going on. Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
I mean, there's, and also when you're mentioning that room, right? This is the sort of like behind the scenes that myself, I'm not a filmmaker, and others who watch the film, like that's kind of the magic, right? That you don't think about all of the work that goes behind the scenes on how to create this like particular, the specifics of kind of what you wanted for this room, right? We don't think about how it's going to be built or, what on to make it happen.
Yeah. And I would say along with that, like I think about those problems that came up as we're moving, as we're going. And another thing that I drew upon was times of organizing events or being involved in organizing actions, right? Things come up. Oh, something is happening. Now the police are over there. So what are we going to do with the thing? We got to bring it over there. And being in those certain situations, I'm sure everybody has their version of that. And understanding how to make things happen. And that was one where I just had faith, like, oh, we'll find the 2 hours somewhere. Like and let's make it be something that we can bring with us. So yeah.
What I love about Sorry to Bother You, I mean, thinking about reflecting on the film, is that it's now almost like a time capsule of like this Oakland that kind of we don't really, parts of it we don't have anymore, right? Like the layover where the bar scene. That was the layover. Now it's a different bar. It's an amazing bar, but it's not, the
I
layover.
haven't been there. What is it now?
It's called Amber Lounge.
Okay.
Totally redone. It's like a little,
Right.
like a lounge now. So it's definitely not, it doesn't have the divey bar, the vibe
Okay.
that it was before. But it's still there. It's just not obviously the same. So yeah, the movie now serves as a time capsule to we can
Mhm.
look back on this Oakland that part of it we don't have anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like that. But having been in Oakland since 1977,
You've
there's
seen
so many places. Yeah. Yeah.
every
Like,
decade, I feel it's like a different, places like come and go, and like every decade it's like, oh yeah, that's hasn't been here for, whatever long. To wrap kind of this, I want to ask you about Guillermo del Toro. One, were you able to keep in touch with him? And two, do you have a favorite Guillermo del Toro film?
yeah, I mean, I was able to get it, like after that meeting or during that meeting, I was like, I need a mentor. He was like, I don't have time. And I said, okay, well, can you give me your email and phone number? And he was like, yeah. And so I've hit him up. Like, I've just never stopped emailing him and asking him questions, and he's never not answered my questions, right? And then after Sorry to Bother You came out, he was like, you need to do a Cabinet of Curiosities. So I was like, okay, cool. This would be a good thing because he's definitely all about genre. And I was like, this would be a good way for me to kind of learn what that is. I don't know what genre, what people want out of that. And so I thought it would be an interesting way. And then I wrote this thing, and I could say it had to do with zombies or whatever. And I was like, okay, how am I gonna make that, like, okay, it's been done to death. And he was like, nope, this is what it is, right? And so I wrote this thing, and at the end, as mine do sometimes, it kind of went over here, and he was like, Boots, you are the Rube Goldberg of cinema. And I was like, I guess I don't know if that's a compliment or whatever. But he was like, and I was like, yeah, I want to go here. Instead, he was like, no, but we're doing genre. You find a different way to give people the thing that they already want. And I was like, okay, well, that's not what I do, but I'll do that if we can make it written by Boots Riley and Guillermo del Toro, because that looks, oh wow, he wrote something with Guillermo del Toro. And so that's what we did. But then I was shooting I'm a Virgo when they were doing Cabinet of Curiosities, so we didn't put that one.
But I mean, you two could still make something happen, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll look, I'm gonna take this time to brag about this real quick. This is what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna try to cover this. Oh yeah, this doesn't show anything. But I will say, this is the thing. I just sent him shots from my new movie, just little clips, and this is the message he gave me.
Let's have a meal, pal. You are now the VFX.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what it is.
George. Oh, wow.
So.
Okay, Mr. Del Toro.
So that's high praise.
You're flexing a little bit there with, I'm gonna have.
Not, yeah, just a little bit. But.
So what's your favorite Del Toro film? Do you have one?
I mean, Pan's Labyrinth, obviously. Hellboy, somewhere between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to hear how that meeting with Del Toro, and next thing you know, you guys are probably going to be working on a project together. I love that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
From Oakland to the universe. We love that. Now you started working, I mean, like I am a Virgo in other projects, you started working on those like scripts, early, versions of that back in 2019, probably even before that. But do you remember what your very first script was? Whether it's been shelved or it's one that you have worked on. Like, do you remember what that
Yeah.
very first
The script ever?
Yeah.
I wrote a play in high school. They everybody voted and they wanted to do a hip hop version of West Side Story. And because we were in East Oakland, we called it East Side Story. And I had never really I had written little skits when we were doing organizing of farm workers. I had written little very corny skits, but nobody volunteered to do the play, to write the play. So I wrote it and wrote myself in as the lead. And that was the first one and that's actually how I started rapping, because I wasn't a rapper, but I wrote these things and people didn't boo. Right. And then
Yeah.
so then I was like, oh, maybe that's something I could do. Then this director I knew in the 90s.
So what year was that when that high school play that you wrote? Do you
That's
remember?
probably 86, 87. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the late 90s, this director I knew was like, oh, I have this movie and it's set in a Black neighborhood, and he wasn't Black. He was like, could you rewrite the dialogue for me? And I was like, I just thought it might be an interesting thing to do. So I started doing it, and that's how I learned Final Draft. I didn't have a computer even. He just like, I have a computer. You just take it and it has Final Draft on it, right? And so I was doing it, and then I started realizing that the story didn't make sense with the dialogue. Like if I was trying to make these people real, and it just started from how they were talking, like I couldn't make the story work, right? And I was like, okay. I remember we were talking on the phone about one scene, and I read him the stuff. He was like, that's good, but it has to do this other thing for the next scene. I was like, but why would she do that? Why would she say that? Which would be the thing that made the next thing happen. It doesn't make any sense. And then he was just like, she would do that because she's a bitch, and then I just realized, like, where the writing starts from, which is, what do you think about these characters, and where like, what's your connection to them? And so I stopped doing that script and had put it down, but it kind of gave me the idea that I could,
you could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but it wasn't until like 2010 that I did have a computer, but I just I downloaded Final Draft and started writing the first scene of Sorry to Bother You.
Back in 2010.
Yeah.
Wow.
I finished writing it in 2010. And that first scene is exactly what I wrote first. I was like, because I had a friend that's how they used to get jobs, was just, they had somebody waiting that worked at a restaurant, and they pretend they were the manager, and then they and who was really not the manager, but would answer the phone and and they had fake certificates made up. My boy Rob Ebo used to do that. And so I was always like, I'm gonna put that in a movie. And so that was the first scene that I wrote.
Almost a decade later. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, from when you first wrote it to.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I wrote it in 2010, and then we filmed it in 2017. Wrote it in 2010, then was trying to, I didn't know anybody in the film industry. There was no Bayless, there was no, and I got turned on to and I had tried to get it made. I could try. I even cold called. I had a manager who I broke up with because he didn't want to do this. I was like, we don't know anybody, but everybody's assistants knew the coup. So I was like, let's just
Use that.
print up a whole bunch of things and send it to everybody. And I
Yeah.
found out he really wasn't doing it. I was the only one doing it. And so we printed it up, sent it. Years are passing. I'm still touring. And then I ran into Dave Eggers on the street on Valencia in the Mission. And I was like, well, by this time I was like, I'm just going to put it out online, and I'll put it out online. I'll, make a thing about it. And then maybe 20 years from now, somebody will be like, that script Boots did one time, let's make it, And so I said, hey, I'm gonna put this out online. Can you give me some notes on it? And he took it and he was like, no, let me print it. And he put it out as its own paperback book. And then I got into to SF Film as a filmmaker in residence. That was 2014 by then. And then I applied to the Sundance and got in there. So little by little, little things kept happening, as we
I think this is a perfect example, particularly for aspiring filmmakers who are tuned in today, that it doesn't happen overnight, right? Particularly if you don't know anyone in the industry, it's hard. You really gotta just, not give up and then just keep at it. And even if it's almost 10 years later,
Well, see, I also knew I was going to do some version of it. Just especially coming from independent music, I was going to do the either the free version, with whatever small cameras that we got and just me and 5 friends, or I was going to do the $100,000 version that I get the record label to give me the marketing money for the album to do it, or the $1 million version where you convince a couple local tech people to do it. I had all these ideas of versions that it could be. And so the idea was that it's going to get made anyway. The question is are you someone that wants to come on board and help make it, right?
This kind of sort of reminds me about funding, right? To try to get your project done, all the hurdles. In Oakland, filmmaking here in Oakland suffered quite a blow earlier this year when the film incentive that had been put together by the Eastville Film Collective, council member Carol Five, former mayor Sheng Tao, it was a $500,000 film incentive, and it got shelved when the contingency budget, because of all the budget issues with the city. So now there's no money for that at the moment. And it's getting tougher, right, to get funding. Obviously, with Trump presidency, it's also trying to get funding. It's really hard. It's hard to find funding to do your projects. And I read last week, I read that the Coen brothers, their very first film, this kind of reminded me what you were saying about everything that you did, sort of reminded me of this that I read. Back in the 80s, I think it was 86 when their first film, Blood Simple, came out. But they were trying to figure out how to finance it, and they did it through individual investors, made a proof concept of a trailer, form a limited partnership, and they were able to secure $750,000 from investors. And the investors would in turn receive a little bit of equity and then interest and any potential profits right off of the film. So that was a really, interesting way, right, to try to fund their project. They did it. And obviously they're really successful now. Do you think that that's a more or less viable method, trying to go that route, considering obviously now outreach you could do through social media and the different funding sites, right, that a filmmaker could do? I mean,
I think it can be, but I think I don't, the real answer is I don't know. Like I'm getting stuff funded, but it partly has to do with the things that I've done, right? So, and even me getting Sorry to Bother You funded has to do with the stuff that I did for 20 years before that, right? And so like in a way, all of that stuff that I did building up, you know, people that I like to work with, or building up an idea of what my artistic output is all part of it. So I don't know, but I think it could be a model that could happen, but it needs to be people that are willing to take more of a risk with their money, right? Because the one fallback sometimes is also you're trying to get it funded and you got some small time business person with their idea of what people want to see, and it becomes this sort of bubblegum, sort of thing too. Like you can have those same influences. So I think uh I think that's a possible way. I can't tell you like what the world of investment is, right? Film
Yeah.
investment is right now. I don't know, but what I do know is if you make a scene that is the new hot shit, right? So right now, people are making, people are just like making things, whether it's music and putting it directly on without getting on without getting onto a label. People are making stuff, whether you like it or not, on like TikTok, things like that. There can be, and with music in the Bay Area, we really didn't wait for people to sign us, right? People just did the thing and got directly to people. And to do that, and at first it didn't work, right? At first, the like Bay Area music, people were so, this is a part of the story that doesn't get told. People were so had such a bad self-image about themselves in the Bay Area that if it wasn't good somewhere else, it must not be that good. Like people people used to talk shit about Too Short when I was in high school. I mean, junior high. Like, oh, he's just, oh, why'd they let him on the Fresh Fest? Blah, blah, blah. He must have paid somebody, right? It's just not even like other artists hating, quote unquote, just like average, because we didn't think of ourselves, we had low self-esteem. And that's what happens so there's a thing that you have to do to create a scene where people understand that it's powerful enough to touch outside of there, right? Because everybody wants to be powerful. So you could create a film scene with extra low budget movies that are done really well, that get excitement going in your area, and also reach out and are able to be taken other places. You take it on the road. That was one of my things that I was gonna do. Like, okay, we're gonna make the $50,000 version of the movie, and we are going to take this and we're going to do a concert. We're going to play it at venues, play the movie at venues, and then afterward do a concert and take it and have things play. I think there are alternative ways to get movies out that won't initially be tracked by Box Office Mojo or any of these things, but that will start making a scene of folks that are looking for these films. And we've seen it in other places. You hear about Nollywood and all that kind of stuff. But there are ways that's just a route that could be created. But it doesn't make screenwriting any easier. It makes it a little harder. You got to figure out how to do the thing, how to make it happen, how to have a group of people that you can work with, that can create your vision, and how to make it exciting enough to where even though it is low budget, people are like down with going out and supporting it.
let's say money is not an issue in Oakland, let's just say, and there's money for incentives to give out to filmmakers. Let's say in a perfect world, this ends up happening, which I know that Make It Bay is working really hard to figure out how to make it happen. But what kind of projects would you are there themes that you would like to see come out of Oakland from filmmakers, or like what excites you? Like what would you like to see?
Well, I mean, I think there's all sorts of different cultures and things that we don't see that happen in the Bay Area that you don't see in the same way in other places. I'll say this, like a lot of other places, you know, are a lot more segregated than the Bay Area is. Right? And it's hard to feel, even for me, to film that reality in some other place because of, you know, the extras casting and who will be available to do stuff. So I think that's something that is something that is able to that could be shown more of. I think that things that have to do with the real struggles that people are going through, the everyday struggles that folks are having, is something that I'd like to see come out of anywhere, but specifically the Bay Area. I think there's, you know, like you said, if money isn't an issue, you could do some period pieces, some historical things. There's you know, a lot of people don't know, like the longshoremen, right now, longshoremen in the Bay Area is like 80-something% Black folks. And the reason for that is when they had they huge strike in the 1930s that in which the military came out, and they had tanks on the waterfront in San Francisco shooting, and they were a group of folks that were thought of as unorganizable, right? Because they were thought of as like less skilled than janitors, because they're just lifting stuff off, taking stuff off the ship and putting it over there, right? And they would get fired all the time, and there was no one place they could move it anywhere. So everybody was like, you couldn't organize them. They organized it, and even then, based on what was happening, they were at the time mainly a white organization in the Bay Area, and the leader, somebody's gonna know on here, Harry, I can't remember his name, but the leader of the longshoremen at the time was a communist, and he was like, what we're gonna do is go to the Black community and say, if you join our strikes, we'll make sure that the Black community is part of it and hired. So now they have not only the most radical union that exists in the US, but they also have the most militant, and they were able to fight to where, you know, one reason why it's still largely Black in the Bay Area is because when you die, your card goes to your next of kin. The union hall does the hiring anyway, but there's this big bloody battle that happened there. That's a big part of Oakland history. Harry Bridges.
Harry Bridges, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, so there are some historical things about the Bay Area that
that you would love to see in film.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff about right now, though, that I'd like to see. I hesitate to be like, somebody should make this kind of movie, that kind of movie, or whatever, because you got to make the thing that you are most excited about.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes what hinders us even from making in art, even in music, period, music or art, period, is this idea of what is this gap between what we think other people want and what we like, right? And so, because when you're making something, you really need to go off of your own excitement. You
Mm.
really need it needs to be something that tickles you, that excites you. It can't just be like, well, I like this, but other people like this other thing. I should do that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm, like, oh, I'm just wise or something. I've messed around with doing that in my head and experimented with that, and it doesn't work. It doesn't do the thing you want it to do,
Mm.
especially because I try to make art that can be used by organizers, that can be used to help build a movement, and that people connect to, and specifically to help hopefully help build a mass militant radical labor movement that uses the withholding of labor as a strategy and tactic to help start a revolutionary movement. But so if I have that as a goal, you might think like, let me just figure out what the most popular thing is,
Mm.
make that, right? And maybe somebody should, but I know I can't. I have to, I have all sorts of weird things I'm into, and the main thing that you want to get across is passion and excitement for life. And
Has
because
to excite you to be able to make it happen. You
yeah,
have to, yeah.
yeah, and because that's, when I'm talking about a movement in which people gain control of the world around them, it's out of a striving for connection to other people, connection to life, and feeling like you're really here right now, not just like letting it pass over you. And artistically, that translates to something visceral and exciting, and
Yeah.
you just really have to feel that.
Do you keep a running list of whether it's like themes, ideas? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's already a script that you have in your head, but do you have a list of like potential scripts at any given time? Do you kind of work off of like what's going on in your life and in the world
Yeah.
in one particular moment? Like, how do you?
Yeah, I often I always keep notebooks with
Mm.
me. I started trying to do it on my phone, but then you like, oh, let me look something up, But I always keep a little notebook with me of
Yeah.
some sort, and I just, whether it's this or something like that, but to write down ideas. And
Ideas.
sometimes, and I've done that since way before I was writing scripts. I've done that just with music. I might have it be like, oh, this is a good idea for a song. And it'll just be that. And I'll have all these ideas, and I'll have like hundreds of ideas. And then I'll like peruse through them, and then I'll realize that idea for a song is really just a good lyric, right?
Hmm.
Because it might be a bigger idea that I just squished down into this one thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things, I think that what happens even with my films is I will have all of these ideas and realize it's just really a lyric. It's really just a beat of something that adds to the texture and the contour of everything.
Mhm.
In this new movie, let me see, I can say this. The character that Lakeith plays is a character that I had originally talked to him about it as the lead of a movie, right? And I
Oh.
had it here, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this character like this. I'm gonna have you play it. He's like, I'm down, just let me know. And then I realized as I was writing this that, oh, that character is in this world right here and is not the lead of it, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of things like that happen all the time.
Yeah. And always just keep them, you write them down. That's the
Yeah,
way.
you write them down, because I used to, early on with music, I used to be like, oh, I got a great lyric. If it's really good, I'm gonna remember it.
Yeah.
And no, I probably have some, some iconic classic lyrics that are somewhere lost in the back of my head. You know,
Yeah.
that, yeah.
I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to questions because I know folks submitted questions ahead of time, and I know Sam is kind of keeping track of the Q&A on Zoom too to get to those questions. So I want to wrap up my portion of my questions with asking you, let's you know, I want folks who are tuned in to get even more inspired, not just by your conversation, but let's get them even more inspired. Are there any projects that are out now, not including your own, from any other filmmaker, whether it's a documentary, short film, a feature, a series? Are there any projects that you really loved, and you, if people don't know, you would want folks to watch?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. You know, it's hard because I've been working on this film for some months, so I haven't watched a lot. I kind of watched the stuff that I needed to watch to vote in the Academy stuff. But let's see, I did see Mickey 17. I liked that. I did see a movie at Sundance called All That's Left of You, about a Palestinian family from the time of the Nakba up till now. And it's really well done. Let's see. I actually really liked A Complete Unknown, even though there's some glaring different things in that are incorrect, like and I went thinking I was gonna hate it, but ultimately it's really great actors listening to really good lyrics, and you're looking at their face while they're discovering these lyrics. So I like that, but the truth is that in that and I got to hang with Pete Seeger a couple times, so I really think Ben Norton's performance is amazing in that, and as is Timothy Chalamet and Monica Barbaro. But let's say this: Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, and Bob Dylan's girlfriend, all hardcore communists, like dyed through the wool, not, oh, I have these ideas, I don't know what we call it. No, they were communists. And their conflict there was about art versus trying to change the world, trying to change the economic system. That was what the conflict was. That being said, I still liked the movie, even though it didn't do that. I did talk to the director and say, hey, I loved the movie. I watched it more than a couple times. And I told him that thing. He's like, oh yeah, but did you see that the refrigerators were red? I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, that's because I found out that communists back in the day used to get red refrigerators. So anyway, that's not the kind of thing I want to do, but that was what he did. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know, other films, I'm sure they'll come to me after I get off of here, but I haven't been able to watch a lot.
Yeah, maybe if it comes to you, you can like post it on either Twitter or Instagram, and then folks can like go, you know, go watch it if you have any other that come to you. That's my portion of all the questions. I mean, the questions that we've gotten from folks are incredible, and we're gonna go through as many as we can because they're really good, and I want to get to as many as we can. Thank you all so much.
Oh, I did like Nickel Boys a lot. I just saw someone.
Nickel Boys. I've been reading about Nickel Boys. I feel like, yeah, I need to check it out.
One of the things that I liked about it was, and I don't know if folks caught that, there's a couple times where the actor actually, I guess, feels that they mess up and they do it again, and they keep that all in there, but it actually kind of works with the character. So
All right, we're gonna move on to questions from your fans, basically from all these filmmakers. There's so many, and I'm telling you, they're so good. So we're gonna get through to as many as we
Yeah.
can. So the first question is, what job sustained you before becoming a San Francisco Film House resident? What advice would you have given your past self after you wrote Sorry to Bother You? So I guess that's a 2-in-1.
Yeah. I was doing music and touring. That was what sustained me. It was through doing my music and touring. And we weren't, we're not that big of a group, so it's kind of collecting pennies, but collecting a lot of pennies all over the place. And so when I decided I needed to put more time into making the movie, it kind of put me in a very bad financial position. And but I again, it was something that I thought needed to be done. So
Okay, so now the next question, let's see, so many to pick from. Someone wants to know, how would you compare writing songs versus writing scripts? What are some of the contrasts and similarities and the transferable skills from one to the other?
well, for me, even writing songs, I think my best songs are ones that are really closely connected to how people talk, right? How I talk, how others talk around me, and not connected to how I think people talk. And that's and it's hard you have to really interrogate yourself about that. And you have to listen and take notes in some way to other people talking. And think about what your real experience is, because sometimes we even remember things through our filter of other art that we've seen. So, for instance, if you were to write a breakup scene or a breakup song, often, like, if you just blurt it out, the first thing that you do, it's going to be full of these cliches that work, right? Even if they're not full of cliches, they're full of a certain form of something that happens. And a lot of our ideas of the world are based on the movies and TV we've seen throughout our life. We spend so much of our life watching these things that we have a sense of the world through that. Like if I were to say, let's say you've never been to India, but I say, imagine Mumbai, right? You could get a picture. Now imagine what the street looks like in Mumbai. You get a picture in your head. That picture is not from being there. It's from James Bond or something like that. And so through these certain ideas, and even our picture of, if we were going to make something about that, we feel like in order to show that this is Mumbai, we got to show this one thing or whatever, a bicycle or something like that, or, but it wouldn't necessarily be what that person's experience is. And so we might even do that to ourselves about our own lives. And it takes some interrogation to separate those things. So if you were to write, if you were to then think about what was actually said the last time you broke up with somebody, what did this person say? What were the pauses? What happened? What rooms did it take place in? Where were you? It might even feel like it's not good for a movie, right? And that's where the writing comes in, is how much of that is just because it wasn't in another movie before, and how much of that has to do with just really your assessment of how people, because we all have seen movies, so we feel a certain way as we're watching something. And so how do you take the essence of what that was, or like the uniqueness, not necessarily the essence of what that was, and where do you edit, where do you cut, And so for me, that's like what I was doing with songs as well.
Someone else is asking, what do you think and how do you balance writing between something that's entertaining and engaging, but it still centers fresh social and political commentary?
You really got to think about what you really believe in life, right? What you really believe is of how the world works, right? And how does that shape the way the world that your characters are in? Like maybe your characters don't even have an idea about how that world works, but it puts that in there. And I think that's what it is like you really have to you're making a story, you're making you're making a world that is happening, that people are watching, and how does that represent how you think the world works, right? And I think here's the thing is that on the fresh part of it, right? Like with my songs, for instance, it wasn't really about, I'm going to expose the truth to you, because I feel like we all have an idea that something's wrong. We all have that idea. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Right? And that, if you want to do that, you need to get into an organization. You need to get into a revolutionary organization and be involved in campaigns that change people's material conditions immediately, but with a longer term strategy of changing the entire economic structure that we're in, the entire economic system that we're in. And when you're engaged in those struggles and you understand what the questions are, what are the things that people that make people want to change things, and where are we at, what needs to happen, and so I think particularly for me, I get a little bored with like, here's a thing that exposes that things are wrong. Because right now, like for instance, we're, it's really obvious, like, and it has been always like something's wrong. So a story about people actually changing it, actually attempting to change it, and through something other than, let me show you this is wrong, and then everybody all of a sudden does something good because of it, right? Because that's not what we're dealing with, and the intricacies of that, you're going to start understanding through organization. So even with my music, I've definitely seen critiques by folks who feel like they're into like radical music and be like, oh, how come the Coos music is so happy and bouncy and blah, blah, blah. It's not even political, right? And that just comes from my history of having been an organizer I'm not saying I am, but trying to get people to do stuff and get involved in things in their neighborhood or on their job, and understanding that people being angry about something, people being scared of something, or feeling uneasy about it, isn't what gets them to do things. It's people feeling like there is hope, like there's a chance, that there's a possibility in doing things. And that's the feeling that makes it fresh as well.
This is a great actually follow-up question to what you're sort of talking about. Someone wants to know, how have you navigated keeping creative integrity? For example, with the politics of your work, what's it like to be in a collaborative process while maintaining the essence of your vision, especially being in a more vulnerable position early on in your career? And how did you advocate for your stories?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to be working with people who don't always agree on everything. Matter of fact, you can get in an organization and people will have some main points they agree with and some other points that they disagree with. I think you'd be surprised how in both the music industry and the film industry, there are people who just really wish things were, I mean, like most people wish things were different, but they don't feel like there's anything they can do about it, right? And so they're like, got to get a job, and they're all over in every field, right? It's interesting what's bringing along more right-wing ideologues, though, is stuff like the tech industry. But often people are just like, I'm just doing this because it's there's nothing else to do. So that's what's happening. And I tell this story a lot, but I'll tell it one more time. Rage Against the Machine was making their album and their video for, I think it was Sleep Now in the Fire or something, where they're on Wall Street and it's Michael Moore directing it. And the idea was they were going to go play their song. The police were going to take them away and that was going to get videotaped. That would be the video. But in this case, they played a couple times. People were looking out there and they played a couple more times. They started hearing chanting, rah, 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 rah. They couldn't tell it was coming from far away. They kept playing some more. And eventually, after a couple more times, they saw from around the corner crowd of people that obviously worked on Wall Street, hundreds of them marching to them. And they were the ones chanting. And they were saying, suits for rage, suits for rage, right? And they were, through that, they were saying, like, they know the contradiction that their suits on Wall Street, but they feel like they agree with rage, and that's a contradiction. And that's because we don't have a revolutionary movement out there yet that is we don't have a revolutionary movement out there that is touching people that they can join. And so people end up just doing all these other jobs. But so there's more people that might agree with you than you think that are out there. But separately, it comes down to how stubborn you are, right? You're gonna have to compromise around things. I've had to compromise, but not around the politic of it. I've had to compromise around how to get something done for the budget, but making films takes years of someone's lives, that sort of thing. So you'll have those things clear early on. And I also, it's in the actual plot. Like there's no one thing you could take out of any of my stuff and then all of a sudden the politic is that much changed. There are little things and it changes a little bit, but the main things people might be against is just intrinsic to the actual
Yeah. A lot of folks want to know sort of the craft behind starting a script. So I'm going to go through a few of those questions. I think they're really good. And I think folks would like to learn a little bit more from your creative process. Someone wants to know, when you're writing, do you know from the beginning that it's going to be a feature versus a pilot? Or has that ever changed midway through working on a project?
I'm not really a fan of TV, right? I'm not. So, one, I don't think many people see TV that much, even like the biggest show on Apple, probably very few people see it. You look at Succession, Their like biggest show supposedly had 3 million viewers. I think a mildly funded, marketed indie movie can get to more people, and that's kind of what I'm want to do. And I separately, I just like stories that end, right? When I started with the idea of I'm a Virgo, I thought that it was put to me as a possible way to get to way more people because of what was said, what the marketing plan was said to be. Turned out that that was not happening, right? And yeah, you know, there's just so much out there that not as many people. So me, myself, besides that one time for I'm a Virgo, it's always a movie for me. But yeah, and what it is, I usually have an idea. I kind of beat out the storyline, but then that changes as I go.
Someone else is asking, what's your process in regards to script writing? Do you start with an ending idea, the final scene, then after write the in-betweens to get to that goal, or do you write in chronological order?
You know, I think of whether it's the final scene or not, I don't know, but I think of what I want to happen, what I want the main conflict to be, what I want the main thing to be about. And then I start developing in my head like what the story might be, what could be, and then as I start getting scenes, I start writing down, okay, a scene like this, a scene like that. It might just be a sentence or something like that, whether it's on cards or whether it's on you know, just, you know, on a notebook. And you know, for me, I guess maybe coming out of songwriting, you know, I have to have a really good first scene. I have to have, yeah, it has to like get people in it, because that does a lot of work for you if you can, like, if it's not like, oh, let me wait for 5 minutes to see where this goes. You know, I want to get people boom, and then, you know, so but yeah, I make sort of beats of what it's going to be. And then I kind of shape that into a chronological thing, and then I just write from the beginning. And then sometimes I you know, by the time I get further on, I've changed it, you know. And so for instance, on the movie that I Love Boosters, I started writing it and got stuck like you know, 20 something pages in, and just really thought, oh, maybe this is not such a great idea. And then I put it down, and I had this other thing that I wanted to write, which is this other script. And I was like, I'll just write the first page just to cleanse my palate. And then I couldn't stop writing that. And then I finished that and then went back to do I Love Boosters with a renewed, like, as I was doing that, I kind of saw other things about things that I wanted to do that I could put in that.
Are there any specific tools, templates, or habits that you recommend to improve the speed at outlining a first draft?
The speed. I don't know. I mean, you know, you gotta, the thing that I started maybe after Sorry to Bother You is I get up at, when I'm writing, I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I write from 6 to 10. And I don't get on the internet
At
or
all.
email or anything before that. Matter of fact, I have a laptop that I've taken the Wi-Fi out of, and I'm just in a room without any possible way of doing
Distractions.
any of that. Yeah, and you just you know you're going to be there for 4 hours. Maybe you're not going to get anything done. Maybe you get a line done. Maybe you get 4 pages done. But at the end of that 4 hours, you're done. You know, unless you're really at the end of that 4 hours, you're really like in it and you're really feeling it, then you might keep going. But you just know that you're going to spend 4 hours. You don't have to beat yourself up if you didn't get anything done that time, because you're going to spend another 4 hours the next day. Now, everybody can do that, but whatever that time is, you know, like when I wrote Sorry to Bother You, I didn't you know, I was still having to do music and do other things. So it was like an hour here, an hour and a half there, half an hour there, things like that. But it would still be dedicated time that I had on the calendar for every day.
This is actually great advice, not just for filmmakers, but any creatives, any writers in general. I'm going to take your advice and start plugging, you know, taking Wi-Fi and just focus on writing, because doom scrolling and just getting on the internet period really takes a lot of hours out of your day.
Exactly, it does. And matter of fact, I also have this phone that I don't have in right now, but I had at one point. Was like kind of a dumb phone. And then I'm getting this other one that's like less of a dumb phone, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, someone else is asking, are there elements to a screenplay that really stand out to you or that you look out for when reading scripts?
No, I mean, I don't, you know, you're asking me, I don't know what people look for, but me, it's just page to page. Am I excited about it? Is there something in there? Does the dialogue feel real? Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm feeling, are these people real? Do I believe it? You know, those sorts of things. I don't think there's one thing is the answer. Somebody might have really good, juicy stage direction, right? And descriptions. That could be that. Sometimes it might be very stylized, right? So I think when I decided I was gonna write Sorry to Bother You, after I'd written that one scene, then I went and I read 2 scripts. I read Repo Man and I think it was, and then Pulp Fiction, right? And 2 very different movies, and also 2 people who didn't really care about form, right? And was just keep things going, keep it exciting, you know, and you can do anything as long as it's working. And I think, you know, I did also read all the, like, how to write a screenplay in 10 days and stuff. And I got in my head, okay, this is what they expect this to happen at this place. So I knew what that was. So I knew that if I wasn't doing that, this is the thought, there's a thought about that, that this isn't happening. So I had that in my head. And you know, I agree that a lot of the movies did follow that template. So I was like, okay, I know people are thinking a thing is going to happen right now. I don't want to do that. So what am I going to do to keep people in, you know? So that sort of thing.
Someone else is asking, what was the best piece of advice that you received in your journey as a creative and a writer?
At the Sundance Labs, this guy who won an award at Cannes, what was his name? He won an award this year at Cannes, but what's his name? It is, I'll tell you his name. Kareem Ainuz. We were there, and you know, you meet at the labs, you meet with other screenwriters, and they tell you they've taken notes and stuff. And so when I had my meeting with him, he was like, hey, I don't know how to do this. I really don't get how you could sit here and listen to advice about your script. I know I couldn't myself. I just come in here for the drinks. And he was like, but the thing I will tell you after reading Sorry to Bother You is like, he was like, is that I love Cassius. I love him and everything that he's doing. I love, I want to help him. I want to hold him. I want, I wish the world wasn't doing all this stuff to him. I just really love him. And then he was like, and that's how I know it's fake, because I hate everybody. And what he was saying is like, that can't be a real person. There has to be something that, at the time I had it be him like being bounced around like a pinball, and just all the decisions were things he was forced into. Like, of course he's gonna do that because of this, of course, and it made me have people take ownership of their mistakes and us see them making wrong choices. And it made the character, it changed so much about the movie. It changed his relationship to Detroit. It changed his relationship to the job and everything. So
Here's another good one. What advice would you give someone who's considering a change in their profession or considering expanding their hustle into media making?
I mean, do the thing that, here's the thing. A lot of advice tries to be given out about how you make sure you keep a job and keep an income coming in. But if we're being real, nobody knows. People are getting fired all the time. There's no safe job to have, right? Like, it's all happening. It's all there. You might as well be doing the thing that you love. If you're doing it because you hope that it's a way to make money, it's not always going to be that. I was doing music for 20 something years and was very well known and was still on food stamps. Right. But it was fulfilling because it was a thing that I wanted to do. Right. And I could see how it was touching people. And that part is not, the money part is not guaranteed. If you were to go to the route that is the guaranteed way to make money, then you better study exactly how everything else is done and do that. And that's going to be boring, So the way to make sure that you do something that affects the way people feel, the way people think, all of that, that's going to be through doing things that are not assured that way, right? But in the end, you got one life, right? And if you are, if you're putting out stuff that represents how you feel, who you are on this earth right now, that's a gift that people don't get. Now, everybody has to survive, but like I'm saying, like, there's a lot of people trying to survive and doing, so I can't tell you what is the best way to do it, because you could get a degree in accounting and get fired, right? And be trying to pay off loans, right? So that's not what, but what I will say, what filmmaking needs are people that are so passionate that that's the thing that they need to make. You know, and and there are you know, there's some in between. You could go become a writer on a TV show, right? You could go become a writer on a TV show, and you could and you can do that, but you're not going to be making the stuff you want to make, and you turn it into a job. And you know, you can be a writer, you can go to the parties and all that. That's cool, that's fun. But if you're asking, it's a different question about how to make something that really comes from you and express it through there. And, you know, there's a thing in music that there's a joke that encapsulates music, and it also encapsulates why there's so many different genres and so many different things to choose from in music, and it's harder to find that in film. And it's the joke that says, what do you call a bass player without a girlfriend? Homeless. And, you know, it's a joke, but it has to do with the fact that people will just do that without a plan, and then try to figure it out as they go. And I think I'm not saying what I'm talking about is the most responsible thing for your life. No, I don't know that, but I know that what filmmaking needs are people that are just as passionate about making film and aren't waiting for the studio to tell them it's okay.
I mean, I think that's the road for many creatives, right? I mean, I think we sort of all go through that. I mean, when you were talking about sort of your journey, I thought about my journey as well. I mean, I was working a 9 to 5 when I first wanted to start as a journalist. I was working a 9 to 5, writing in the middle of the night from like, you know, midnight to like 3 a.m., then going back to work in the morning, kind of knocking on doors until, you know, someone gave me an opportunity, and I started at East Bay Express. And so, you know, yeah, we got to hustle. And even when I was at East Bay Express, I still had to have another job. So you just gotta hustle.
Yeah. Yep.
Here's another really good question. Tell us about a time you follow your creative gut and went against advice, and it gave you the outcome you hoped for, or it exceeded your expectations.
I mean, all through, sorry to bother you, there's so many people. I mean, yeah, definitely there are producers that I know now who were like, don't make this movie, go try to make a different movie first and come back and do this. There were people that told me, people that I think are great people too. It's not just like, oh, they don't know anything. That were like, just write. It'll take you a long time to make a movie. Just write your movie, because you can, by the time you make that movie, you could have written 3 other movies, which was true. So you know, I mean, that happens all the time. So many that it's hard to pick out one. But I don't want to just put that as the romantic thing, because you do also have to tell people, you do also have to you know, live by the best idea in the room wins sometimes. And you're like, you have to have your ego in check enough to figure out when that's a real, when that's something that idea might be good, right? And so there's a lot of those times as well, right? So, you know, often people will say about me, I'm uncompromising, like as a, you know, as an accolade, right? But, you know, there's like hundreds of compromises that are happening all the time. And sometimes it's around like somebody saying, try this. What about that? And oftentimes you're like, no, I want to do this thing, but you got to be open to other ideas and or at least be objective, try to think about it objectively, because you know, what I learned from making music is you could have, you know, the best bass player in the world, the best guitar player in the world, the drummer that thinks they're the best drummer in the world, and me, usually I'm the worst musician in the room when we're recording something. But it's my vision that I'm making happen, and I know how I want it to sound, and I know that okay, the guitar player wants to do a guitar solo, but he always wants to do a guitar solo. So no, this song, we're not doing that. But you also have to be ready when the bass player has like a better, like, this is better. You're like, oh, wow, that's better, because I'm not attaching my ego to all these different points in the creative process. My ego is attached to the final thing and making that thing the best thing that it could be.
What would your younger self tell you now to better prepare you for where you are now, for being at the top, like in this moment in your career?
What could my younger self tell me now? Take a nap. You know, I don't know. My younger self is always talking to me. I kind of have been in been, in kind of this creative cave almost, even though I'm out and about. I've had this sort of tunnel to go through. And so, yeah, that I'm always thinking about what I set out to do in the first place.
This next question is super relevant to where we are right now, kind of like the political times that we are living in. Someone asked, sorry to bother you, challenged conventional storytelling in many ways. Do you believe alternative narrative structures are more effective in delivering radical political messages? How do you see the future of socially engaged cinema?
Alternatives, do I believe alternative structures are, can you ask that question one more time?
Yeah. Do you believe alternative narratives are more effective in delivering radical political messages? And how do you see the future of socially engaged cinema?
I don't know what alternative narratives means. Like, do they mean the structure of something? Yeah, I don't know. The real answer is I don't know. I think we got to try everything, And I think doing things in different ways for art is important to keeping that level of passion and engagement up, right? Like keeping people on their toes. Like some of the things I do in my writing is to keep people guessing, and so that they don't know. And so I don't know if that's alternative. I'm not like laying all the seeds out for everything all the time. My goal is to keep people engaged and on their toes and having a certain relationship with the work as it's happening. And the future of radical cinema, was that the question?
The future of socially engaged cinema. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's gonna have to be making films and distributing them in different ways, having ways to play them with community organizations in different cities, right? And take them on tours and be involved and meet people through that and have it be used to keep people engaged in real life. Because I think one of the dangers that's happening is like, we're just making content that goes on these streamers and that then funnels everybody into this one thing, and they're on the screen their whole life, and and they feel like the parameters of what they can do have to do with affecting what's happening on social media.
Mm.
And so it really changes things. And I think film could be used as a way to gather people in places and then be involved in other things.
Do you think that it's going to be harder to fund projects that are more political? Given, I mean, I feel like the arts obviously are very much at stake right now under Trump. So do you think the more political projects, are they going to be harder to find funding for?
Again, I don't know. I mean, I realize that the truth is I'm in a special situation, having had a movie that made a bunch of money, right? So, but the thing is that I've always, you know, when I wrote Sorry to Bother You, Obama was in office, right?
Mm.
It probably wouldn't have gotten picked up if Obama was still in office when I brought it to Sundance, right? There were people that felt like, oh, we got to challenge what's going on only because Trump was in office,
Hmm.
right? So it's hard to know. Again, also, though, there are more fascist policies happening, and there are people there are people stepping in line around that. So, you know, yeah. So it's a toss up of what
Yeah.
could happen. There may be more people with money looking to fund things.
More radical political projects,
Yeah, it's possible.
possible.
I
Yeah.
don't know. You know, on the other hand, I don't know. I always wonder what trying to figure that out does. Like, how does that help or hurt us to figure that out? Like, you know, with music, we used to go to conferences and there would be people from the industry saying, you know, talking about, oh, what they're looking to fund is this sort of thing now. What they're looking to fund is that sort of thing. And sometimes there'll be people try to make music that went into that sometimes, but always whatever came out and was the new thing was something that they weren't funding before, right? So, but to know whether, I mean, things are going to be hard no matter what. Whether it's going to be more hard or less hard, to me, isn't the question. Like, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'll figure out how hard it is once I get there, you know.
Speaking on funding and, you know, kind of the position that you're in now that you've, you know, and where you are in your career, someone's asking, how did you get funding for Sorry to Bother You? And is it easier now? Do people just come out, you know, and or studios just come out and say they want to fund your films?
How was it before? Before, let's see, you know, it was, I kind of got it hyped little by little to make it seem like it was the thing that everybody had to be involved in. It was the hip thing. So first I reached out to Patton Oswalt on Twitter because someone said, oh, he had quoted a Coup lyric. So I hit him up, said, would you read this? He was like, yeah. He read it. He was like, yeah, you could tell people I'm down. I had done a show to buy an ambulance for Palestine with David Cross in Minneapolis, and I had his phone number from way back then, and I hit him up and got him the script, and he was like saying he was down. So I had two people saying that, oh, they're down to be part of it, and I kind of took that around because before that it was even hard to get friends, honestly, to read the script, right? Like, I've been trying to get Erykah Badu to read the script since 2010, and she'd never read the script, but she did an event for us for Sorry to Bother You when it came out, and watched it for the first time, and she was like, I should have read the script, right? And but so it's hard because everybody's, you know, like, busy. Everybody's got stuff to do. So getting these names helped. Then Dave Eggers got involved and started saying, saying like that it was a good script. So then people started clicking on it and reading it, and that gave it kind of like, oh, this is good. This is this new thing, blah, blah, blah. And then, but I was a rapper. So I got filmmaker behind my name by being a filmmaker in residence at SF Film. So it's all of this building up. Stone Soup. Oh, these people like it. Those people like it. This and that. And then I got producers on board, like all of this stuff kind of piling on each other, and you're making the bed softer for somebody to jump in on. And I got producers who had stuff at Sundance before, then submitted to Sundance and got it in the labs. So I did that and used the idea, the false idea that once you get in the labs, you're definitely going to get into the festival. Usually it doesn't usually happen, but I, kind of put that out there and made it cool. Then then Jordan Peele was going to play the lead. And so that made it be like a talking point. And so all this time we're talking to different people that possibly might put in money and making it this cool thing. Then Jordan Peele directed Get Out and decided he didn't want to act anymore. And then we're doing that. Then we got Donald Glover. Then he pulled out to do Lando, so like it's like building it up little way. Now I'm talking about I know I'm in the music industry and but there's smaller versions of that. How do you make this thing seem inevitable, right? And then met Nina Yang Bon Jovi. Nina Yang Bon Jovi who had produced Fruitvale Station, and she had people around her, Macro, people also connected with Macro, and we got these folks together. But partially because we already had a cast that could, that was a little exciting. So it was the cast that helped that happen, and getting the cast interested in reading it had to do with all these other little things. But then, sorry to bother you, we did it for less than $4 million. It's made like 28 million, and then whatever streaming is happening, so I can say it's successful and people want to be involved in something like that. So people do hit me, studios submit things asking me to do it, but I'm only doing my own stuff. So, but that doesn't give me any special knowledge about what's going on.
Yeah.
How someone can make it happen. And I think nobody knows. I think what you do need is something exciting and I always thought that about my music. I knew what I was trying to do politically with it, so it had to be the best. It couldn't just be name checking, certain ideas. It couldn't just be doing this. It couldn't just be as good as this thing. I needed to, whether it was or not, I needed to think that it was really good, this undeniable thing, in order to get over all of these things. So it made me learn to kind of key into what things that I like. But yeah, it takes a lot of hustling to build up this thing. So
speaking of sorry to bother you, someone wants to know how many drafts did it take from like the very first version to where you went into production?
It's impossible for me to know because I just like kept the document open and just
kept
was changing things. I wasn't like printing it out like this is draft 1, this is draft 2. I was just like, like, oh, this would be a good line. Let me tweak that. Oh, it'd be better if he did this and that. And a lot of times I'd be like using the voice reader on there, which is just a computer error, and just so I could listen to it, and I listen to it with music and to kind of get like a score going and like think about like how long scenes were and things like that, So yeah, I never really, it's like the first draft, but it's not really the first draft because
It's
yeah,
a
change over
constant,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
changing document. And did you get notes from anyone?
Yeah, I at first I had gone to like earlier, the first time I went to Sundance, many years before, I had met these filmmakers. I think some of them are from the Bay, but they used to have Gorilla News Network,
Mhm.
and they made a movie with Rosario Dawson called This Revolution, or whatever. And so I got it to them, and they gave me a bunch of notes, and it was interesting because it was something I hadn't thought about. I had met Oliver Stone. Like when I was only 30 pages in, actually, I was getting notes. I met Oliver Stone. I had 30 pages, and his assistant was like, "Oh, our readers will read it for you." And so that's how they were like, "Oh, he's really good at dialogue." And and that actually influenced me to finish it, right? Because
Mhm.
like, oh, here's some people in the industry. They say I'm good at dialogue. So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, and then as we went, obviously there were notes at the labs. Uh Producers had notes, things like that. And some things I agreed with, some things I disagreed with, right? But what it helped me do was like just like having an audience.
Hmm.
You see it differently.
Are there any tools, apps, or templates that you recommend to someone writing their first script?
Tools that, I mean, I've only used Final Draft, but I've heard about all sorts of other things that are supposedly just as good. Um, so that's all I know is that um uh notebooks and cue cards, things like that. Those are on Final Draft. They have other pages that you could do kind of like cue cards on, or you can just kind of write down notes, things like that. Sometimes I've used those things. I think that, yeah, I think that's all I know. Yeah.
I know you mentioned earlier that you don't like TV. You like to like films is kind of your thing. But I'm a Virgo, ended up being a series, not necessarily TV, but streaming. So
No,
someone
what?
wants to know, what's your writing process? Is it different when you're thinking about when it becomes a series versus when it's a film?
Yeah. Also one way that I'm a Virgo came out is because I had deals for these other scripts that I pitched ideas for that were all features. And they were like, they want you to make this a TV thing. And then I was like, I got to like page 28. I was like, I'm done. I could turn this in and get money for it and it's done. Okay, cool. I'll turn that in and deal with it later. Then they're like, yeah, let's do it. Right. So that just kind of came from like that got done before this other thing got done, right? But it also felt like cheating because you're like, it's not, I also had a season breakdown, like what happens in each episode. I already had that, but it just felt like it's easy to talk about an idea. It's a lot different to like execute it. And that feels weird about TV. Like I can just kind of give this like half-baked idea and be like, let's deal with it later, you know. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of how that ended up being. And then while I was doing it, while we were putting it together, it was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go make a movie while this happens. Let's put together a writer's room. Um, and so we put together a writer's room, but as it was happening, going back and forth, I realized I can't, just like, it's so intricate what I'm doing that that was the hard thing for the writer's room is like, so I just kind of had to, kind of really do a lot to get that out there, but that was only put up there because I think they knew I didn't really want to do a TV show, and they were like, okay, just in case he bounces on us, let's have this whole thing set up, you know.
Yeah. When you're directing, how much room do you leave for improv?
Oh, a lot. I mean, we get what we're doing, and then we'll like, you know, the actor will be like, well, what if I say this? You know, and you know, to like mold the line more to their thing. I would say like with Sorry to Bother You, it's kind of a, you know, a good amount in the sense that it's not necessarily improv on the lines, but in the way it's like a lot of why I feel like Lakeith was so good in that is that we didn't like rehearse it to where it just is like mechanical. A lot of what he's doing in there is trying to remember the line. And it ends up feeling like it does right now, where I don't know exactly what I'm going to say at the end of this sentence. It comes out in a different way than if I said it a few times. It comes out in a different way than if I said it a few times. It comes out in a different way than if I said it a few times, right? So that, you know, like it feels more natural. So I'm very into that sort of a thing. And there's also the different kinds where like a line might be changed because the person is just doing more the feeling of it, and it's changed a little bit, but it has that in there because I naturalism is, as you know, weird as it sounds with what I'm doing, it's very important in the acting style. But then there are the other kind of improvised lines, which are like, you know, the actor being like, what if I say this? You know, and if it's a comedian, they'll often have that. And so, you know, it's really about figuring out where it goes and how it feels for the thing, you know.
Yeah. We have time for about 2 more questions, so we're gonna, you know, 2 more for you. I want to thank everyone who submitted question. I mean, there were so many. I'm like scrolling through all of them, and I wish we had more time for all, you know, all the other questions that were submitted, but these are 2 good ones. What are some ways that you suggest approaching folks to help produce their projects?
You know, not to keep beating a thing, like it's very different depending on the project and the person you're approaching and the person that is approaching the person. But you know what you need help with, right? And you know, if you're a writer, I would think that part should probably be done, you know, like, because then, you know, you're saying, I've got this thing. I think it's good. I think it's almost there. I think it, you know, like you have to have that thing right there, the thing that like it's to a place that you love. Because maybe the help that you're asking for is, could someone help by giving me some notes on this? So that's different kind of help than, you know, a later thing. And, you know, have a great pitch. You know, the one thing that helped me from having written raps for 40 years is I knew how to edit it so that the pitch got people. Like, you know, there were definitely like times when executives had set up meetings. I did a whole thing flying to New York to meet with this one studio, and was sleeping on people's couches, you know, to get there. And I get in the room and the dude says, you know, actually, sorry, I did double book this, so I'm going to have my assistant here listen to your pitch while I go. I'm going to stay here for the first 30 seconds, but then I'm going to leave and they're going to listen to your pitch and tell me about it later. And I was like, fuck. I came all the way here. But I was like, I was like, you're gonna stay because you're gonna like this. And it was only because I had all the experience at like getting it down to these places and understanding, and actually getting the pitch down helped me in the editing of my script, because I knew like what parts, when I said this, like what kind of reaction it got then when I said this, and where it took people, right? So you know, have something really interesting, have something that doesn't just seem like, oh, this will be something that'll be a hit, right? It has to be interesting. It can't be like, well, I've, you know, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be. It has to be interesting to you. But it, you know, if you want to stop somebody and get them to work with you, that's what you got to do.
We're gonna end with one last question. This past 3 screenwriting sessions, one with Franklin Leonard and Rafael Casal, Naima Jordan and Ryan Fleck, and now with you and I, are serving as a, you know, inspiration, right, for all these folks who are gonna submit to Bayless, and even if they don't, just to get people inspired to work on their projects. So I want to hear from you. What types of scripts would you like to see? What kind of projects? We touched on a little bit earlier in the conversation, but for you personally, like, what would you like to see come out of the Bay, you know, as far as projects go in the next few years?
I don't know, something where I can feel like I've never seen this before. Not just I've never seen it out of the Bay. I've never, like, I don't know what kind of movie this is. That's just, I mean, if you're, you know, and that's not what everybody wants to do. So, but that's, if you're asking me one thing that I would want to, and again, you saw the list of movies I had that I liked from this year. None of those were that kind of thing. Like, I've never seen this before. There were versions of things, but you know, I think that's it. Okay, I gotta leave from this place that I'm in. I'm holding.
Yeah, they're kicking you out. Boots, I want to thank you so much for being part of this. I know everyone is like super excited and so grateful for you. And we can't wait to see I Love Boosters. I look forward to chatting with you about that project when time's.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, and you know, good luck on your projects. Go for it, make it happen. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. And I will see you soon. Yeah, definitely real soon to talk about I Love Boosters.
All right.
Boots, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Issa. Thanks.
Safe travels.
Thanks. I'll see you now. All right. Peace. Bye.
Thanks, Boots.
Thank you so much for that, Susana, Boots Riley. Really special. You know, we're really trying to make sure that everyone on this call, everyone submitting to the Bayless, is able to put their best foot forward. And we're going to work hard to give you every tool you need to do that. But we also need information and feedback. So there's a link in the chat to fill out a survey so we can learn more. And I just want to thank everyone, and I want to kick it to Issa to just close us out.
Yeah, something that's just on my heart that I was thinking about the through lines of all these conversations is I feel like sometimes we come to these workshops for a lot of different reasons, right? But sometimes we come because we're stuck or we want certain answers, and we're stuck in the weeds of like the technicalities of our craft. And there's so much that gets covered in these workshops. But I feel like something Boots is so good at drilling down into is like the heart piece and connecting to that urgency piece of like, what is it that we want to say, and standing in that Bay Area spirit of independence. And something that he said that hopefully people caught is like making this thing feel inevitable to the people you're talking about it to and to yourself. And just knowing like, I'm going to make this happen because I'm feeling really urgently connected to the truth of what I'm saying. And I also loved that he always brings up in everything he talks about around how our art making brings us into this like honest reckoning with ourselves and our truth. And like, I love that he was really asking and inviting us all to parse through those moments in our craft where it's like, there's the performance of what I could be saying or the cliche of this scene. And then there's the truth of this scene. And I think that's that's the art we need right now. And I feel like we're all feeling so many different emotions, but I feel like tonight reminded me that like when we're just trying to stay safe, when we're just like searching for what's the thing I should say to get the funding, then we miss the moment and we kind of sell ourselves short. And right now, I think we really need to be making those films and those scripts that I feel like are true to our stories. And that's the Bay to me, like in my own humble opinion, I feel like that's the spirit of the Bay. And that to me is very much the gift of Boots Riley and his legacy. So I'm feeling very on fire about that. And definitely a lot of people have been asking, this conversation will be recorded. We will get that to you. And please fill out the survey because it helps us a lot. Go check out bayvac.org. I just want to say so many thanks to Sam and the Baylist and Blacklist crew for this collaboration and partnership. And stay connected. And thank you so much, Azucena, for your incredible facilitation and moderation. And again, all y'all asked so many amazing questions. Shout out to my colleague, Brittany, who's been doing behind the scenes tech. And yes, that's all I have, Sam. But yeah, good night, everyone. Get that dinner going and
Good night. Get some rest. Take that nap or /sleep that Boots said he would take.
Good night,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you all for joining.